Hey there, Dr. Anna Maria Helt, herbalist and microbiologist, here with a camera that doesn't want to focus and with Osada Natural Health. This is part 4 of our ongoing Rocky Mountain High Elevation Medicinal Plant Walk. Today I'll also show you a really cool local mushroom that I've talked about in some other videos as well. So this is the final installment of our earlier season herb walk that I did in May, so that you can see the plants in their early stages of growth. After this installment, moving on with part 5 and beyond, we will be in the mountains in July, looking at the plants as they're a little bit further along and getting more deeply into their medicinal uses. So stay tuned. If you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, this is the 4th part of the series. So there are 3 other videos on my channel. You can just look for Rocky Mountain herb walk or some such title on my channel and you'll find them. I recommend looking at them in order, where you get to see a whole bunch of really super cool medicinal plants and some mushrooms as well that reside not just in the Southern Rockies where I am, but elsewhere in the Rockies and really elsewhere in the world for some of these plants and mushrooms that I talk about. So here we go with part 4. And as I said, in the next installment in part 5, we'll come back to some of the same places that I've taken you in the mountains here a little bit later in the season.
Decided to move over to La Plata Canyon to see what is coming up here. Again, about maybe 10,000 feet elevation or so. And looking at the world's smallest mountain, Parsley. Here's one here. Here's another one coming up right there. Member of the APACA that people eat. This is Aspen Bracket on a downed aspen tree. Normally this would be sticking out instead of down. This is another very common conch here in the Rockies, at least in the Southern Rockies, and is the bane of the Forest Service because it's actually parasitic. That's not necessarily a bad thing though, because it does create nesting habitat for various birds. So this is a polypore. Let me get closer there. This is the pore releasing surface here, and you can kind of see the holes. This is a bit of an old conch here. There's a couple more here. We're able to get up close and personal to them because this tree has fallen down. There's another one here. Again, normally this pore releasing surface here would be facing down towards the ground. So these are kind of hoof shaped. They can look like burned wood. Let's see if I can find one that looks a little more burned. If you look at kind of the dark area there on the top side of this conch, it does look sort of like old wood. Now this one is used, it's used together with tobacco to enhance the effects of tobacco, and is closely related to a number of Felinus species that have been studied and used for a very long time medicinally. Felinus igniarius is a closely related species that blocks multiple steps of flue replication. It can reduce entry into cells. It can reduce steps of viral replication inside of a cell. And it also blocks egress of the virus from the cell, meaning it prevents it from leaving the cell. And whether our local species here of Felinus, here's another one, does the same thing is not clear. It's something I would like to experiment with. Here's another one here up close. The pore surface can get darker colored, like a brownish, as you see here. This has methyl salicylate in it, possibly derived from the aspen tree that it grows on. So this is a big old dead aspen. Look at that sucker. Methyl salicylate is something that comes from aspens, and sometimes mushrooms that grow on a tree will derive compounds from the tree. Sometimes the mushrooms will synthesize it on their own, but this is Aspen Bracket. This mushroom, or this conch, has some closely related family members, actually in the same genus of Felinus, that have been used for centuries as medicine in Asia and elsewhere for things like diarrhea, and for the kidneys as a diuretic. For general detox, it's considered cooling. This, like many other mushrooms, or at least its relatives, have been used for other of the chronic diseases like cancer and heart disease. This particular species doesn't have a lot of information that I can find on medicinal uses, our own local Felinus here. This is a big sprawling Juniperus communis, one of our higher elevation junipers that we see here in the San Juan Mountains. Just showing you the whole thing growing around an aspen tree. A little closer up so you can see the leaves. So juniper is wonderful medicine, and as this area gets drier and drier, what with the long-term drought that we're in, this becomes even more valuable medicine because it's an incredibly resistant plant, and it has a unique way of conserving water that's not shared by many of the other trees and shrubs around here. So it'll be around for a while when other things are unfortunately dying off or having to move, higher up the mountain to keep living and reproducing. And so juniper is great medicine on a lot of levels. On every continent where it grows, it's used for protection. It's burned for protection, whether we're talking about here in North America, especially in the Southwest, or over in Europe. There is evidence that this may have been a sacred plant in the ancient goddess religion that preceded the current male-dominated monotheism. The berries and the leaves are useful. I love both for incense. The berries are also commonly used. Here's an old berry here. Unfortunately, this one's not really fruiting at the moment. See that one? They're usually a beautiful bluish, purplish. The berries are useful for kind of chronic, low-level urinary tract infections, not a hot, acute urinary tract infection, because the berries themselves are quite warming and they could be irritating, but it's strongly antiseptic. It can be useful for other types of infections. I like to throw it in cold and flu blends. It's great as a muscle rub for sore muscles as well. The berries are wonderful for digestion, and they actually are traditionally cooked with different types of meats, wild boar for instance, and most likely enhances the digestion of that protein. So juniper, this is another plant that if you go to any of Dara Seville's classes or get her book, she talks a lot about juniper. We have multiple other species around here. This is a shortish one, more of a shrub, but we have some at a lower elevation than where I am now that are more like trees.
So thanks for watching, and like I keep saying, next time around we're going to be looking at the plants a little bit further along in their development, a little bit later on in the season, and dive more deeply into their medicine. So stay tuned for part 5, and feel free to ask questions, and I'm happy to answer them.